Welcome everyone to the first episode of our new series, Futuristic Education, brought to you by Edudevs School of Inspired Teaching and Learning and powered by Amrita Vidyapeetham University. I, Kuhika Dhingra, on behalf of Edudevs, present to you our esteemed panelists who have gathered for an enriching deliberation on augmenting emotional intelligence. Honored to welcome Ms. Vibha Khosla, Founder Principal, Shri Global School, Delhi West, an astute educationist with a preeminent career of more than 20 years. She is adept at educational planning and administration. Ms. Khosla has established several schools and is highly admired as a mentor. She is an ardent believer of the happiness curriculum and passionately works towards enhancing the emotional well-being of children. We welcome you today, ma'am.
Thank you so much. I am actually honored for such a humble introduction. Thank you, and a very good evening to everyone.
I heartily welcome Ms. Seema Sahay, Principal, Shri Goenka Public School, Sarita, Vihar, New Delhi, to the panel discussion today. She is a distinguished educator and administrator with a career in education spanning over 25 years. An active part of CBSE mentoring team, she has led several international delegations under her exceptional leadership and has been the proud recipient of REX Karamveer Global Education Change Champions Fellow Awardee in 2019. Thank you for gracing the panel today, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Kohika, and the entire team of Edudevs for actually having this kind of a platform for so much of deliberation on futuristic education. I'm so glad to be here, truly honored. Thank you so much.
And honored to welcome Dr. Shoury Kutappa, Academic Manager and Counsellor, Outreach at Amrita School of Engineering, Amrita Vidyapeetham University. He is highly skilled in learning and development with more than 16 years of experience providing guidance and enhancing collaborations and organizational development. An accomplished group process facilitator, he is a renowned expert in leadership, emotional intelligence, and operational excellence. We look forward to hearing your insights today, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Pleasure being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. And I proudly welcome and introduce our moderator for the day, Ms. Devyani Kapoor. A former principal, author, and passionate EduLeader, Ms. Kapoor carries over 3 decades of experience in the education sector. A pragmatic thought leader, she is the founder and CEO of Edudevs School of Inspired Teaching and Learning. Accredited Iconic Edupreneur of the Year Award in World Education Awards 2021 by INSEAD in Space, she is renowned for introducing numerous innovative pedagogical techniques and creating new benchmarks in the field of education. Once again, I welcome all of you who have just joined the session. Any questions that you may have, you can put them in the chat and they will be addressed at the end of the session. And now I hand over the baton to our moderator, Ms. Devyani Kapoor.
Thank you so much, Goenka. I warmly welcome each of our esteemed panelists to this nascent episode of our series, Futuristic Education. The future of the world is in my classroom today. The world is moving forward. There have been revolutionary changes, and we see that technology is affecting every aspect of life in a big way. And hence, education too. One of the core principles that guides the 21st century education system is the extensive use of technology in teaching and learning, which our National Education Policy 2022 emphasizes and also sees the future of education only with technology integration. The pattern of teaching and learning is changing, and the modes opted for education are also becoming more exciting, sensible, productive, and pragmatic. So when we sum up all this, we see a new approach to education coming up. And this is known as the futuristic education. The approach makes the students learn at a global level and become global citizens. In our attempt to keep pace with the innovations in education and sensitize our community of educators, Edudevs, in association with Amrita Vidyapeetham, is geared up for yet another initiative known as the Futuristic Education. We will deliberate with a panel of experts on various aspects of education that will rule the classroom in the years to come. As they say, technology won't replace teachers, but the teachers who use technology will probably replace those who do not. But however, in our first episode, we leave technology aside and start from the most basic aspect of child development and attempt to unravel the most human aspect that is taking the front line. This is the emotional intelligence, which forms the core of the child's development. When I look at the dictionary, it defines emotional intelligence as one's ability to recognize, manage, and use emotions to adapt to situations, achieving goals. Another definition says emotional education intelligence forms the juncture at which you see cognition and emotion meet. It facilitates our capacity for resilience, motivation, empathy, reasoning, stress management, and the list can go on. In his book, Daniel Goleman explains, the book's name is Emotional Intelligence, Why It Can Matter More Than IQ. And he explains how emotional intelligence helps individuals in their daily life. Emotional quotient matters, and if cultivated properly, affords one opportunity to realize a more fulfilled and happy life. Let's start and deliberate with our esteemed panel the aspects of augmenting emotional intelligence. I address a common question to all our panelists before moving on to some specific questions. And this question is commonly addressed to all. My sequence will be, we'll start with Ms. Vibha Khosla, followed by Ms. Seema Sahay, and then Dr. Shoury Kutappa. Why do you think emotional intelligence is so important in the classrooms? Why do you think this aspect reigns supreme in any class, right from the nascent years to teenagers? Yes, Ms. Khosla. And the time limit is 2 minutes for each question. Answer, yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Devyani ji. A very lovely question that you've asked, emotional intelligence, and you've already spoken about it, that how EQ is even, better than when we say IQ. Initially, we used to say that we're born with the intelligence and that's all about it. But in today's time, with the modern research that we are having, we are seeing that EQ is actually taking a step over. And when we talk about emotions and we talk about the classroom, so in the classroom, it is the emotions which are there of the teacher as well as of the students. So I would start with the facilitator, because if my glass is empty, I may not be able to give it anything to anybody. So it's important that, both of them, the confluence of both the student and the teacher is there, and the emotional quotient for all of them is high, and emotions are valued for. So the first factor which is there is, when we talk about emotions, is self-regulations. Can I regulate my own emotions? Can I regulate my own anger? Can I regulate my own frustration? Can I regulate my own happiness? You know, if I can, then I have the capacity to deal with the situations. There is no syllabus for life. We can give syllabus in the classroom, but when we are preparing our students for life, there's no syllabus. The first thing is that they need to have these skills strengthened. So it's important that in the classroom, the self-awareness is there both for the facilitator as well as for the students. Not only awareness, the regulation part is also there. So it's not that I will not get angry. I can get angry, but how do I regulate my emotions? How do I keep myself motivated? These are the skills which are very, very important for the students to learn. And how do we learn it? In the class, if one child does not understand the feeling of the other, is disrespectful to the feeling, if there's bullying which is happening, if there is no empathy, how do we expect that congenial environment? How do we expect that learning will happen? So the communication, is very important. Developing these skills, balancing these skills are very, very important. So I feel that more than the IQ, EQ is important, and it needs to be catered to. And this is something that we can all learn. And it's like nature versus nurture. So we can nurture this feeling in the classroom, and it's very, very important to go ahead and nurture it.
Thank you so much. I think very well said. It's not just self-awareness, but it is self-regulation that is the bottom line of honing your emotional intelligence. Thank you so much, Ms. Vibha. Moving on to Ms. Seema Sahay. Yes, ma'am. Let's hear you out.
Ma'am, there seems to be some technical issue from Ms. Sahay's end. Let us move forward and we'll have her join.
All right, we hear out what Dr. Kutappa has to say on the importance of emotions in the classroom. Yes, Dr. Kutappa.
Thank you, Miss Khosla. Thank you so much. I think you have very neatly, expressed and summed up how how EI comes. What is the interplay of EI in classrooms? A tough act to follow, of course, but I thought I'd just list out 3-4 bullets that kind of come into play. Again, from EI, from a student standpoint, from a student perspective, a couple of things that make EI that important in a classroom. Number one, emotions or the presence of emotional intelligence can help students tackle and avoid danger. Yeah, EI or emotions, one of their primary functions in humans is to give us the ability to understand and respond to danger. So yeah, presence when children are the children who are that much more emotionally aware have a keen sense of being able to identify and respond to danger in that much more efficient manner. One. Number two, students who are high on EI, you will have seen that their decision making capability is that much more sound. If you're as facilitators, as teachers, I think this is something that we will very easily be able to pick up when we walk into a classroom. Students who are visibly high on their decision making abilities are said to be high on emotional intelligence as well. So as a corollary, if your emotional intelligence is sound, or one of the benefits of a sound emotional intelligence in classroom is the students are then able to make that much more better decisions on their own. Of course, like Ms. Vibha Khosla just covered, the aspect about understanding self and understanding others better is a sort of a fallback of emotional intelligence. When you're emotionally aware, like Ms. Vibha just said, you're able to understand the other person better. You're able to understand yourself better. And this, of course, in a conventional classroom is of a very high value. Yeah. I think one of the reasons why the conventional classroom system is still yearned for, why we look forward to the conventional classroom, is because EI can actually, EI can actually be developed in this form. And I think keeping in mind my 2 minutes, the last point I'd like to make is, a sound person who's got a sound emotional intelligence is able to identify negative streams, that much more efficiently than a person who's not of sound emotional intelligence. So therefore, people are able to distinguish negative streams that much more efficiently, again, in a very student's context. So very quickly, I think in a student's context, things that emotional intelligence brings to a classroom is, one, the ability to, identify a negative stream, a negative thought, or so on. The decision making ability, again, that is like something which will help facilitators also separate or distinguish between highly EI capable and not so highly EI capable students. And of course, the most important point, the ability to identify and manage danger. Yeah, that's as a core human kind of a thing. Emotions or emotionally intelligent people are that much more efficient in managing danger. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shoury Kutappa. Very well, crisp listed points. I think our viewers will really benefit from them. I think you expanded on what Ms. Vibha Khosla said, that both IQ and EQ is important, and awareness and regulation. And then you build upon that people high on emotions have a very strong decision making, and they respond to danger very quickly, and also they refrain from negative streams. So these are some of the benefits that students have when they are nurtured properly, and their emotional quotient or their emotional intelligence is properly honed. We wouldn't leave you, and we'll continue the discussion with Dr. Kutappa. My next question in that specific question and answer round is addressed to you. Now that you spoke about these, benefits of emotional intelligence, we often see that now we are talking in the teacher-student scenario, and we see that teachers do the best they can when it comes to, they're constantly dealing with indiscipline and different kinds of problems, bunking and absenteeism of students, so many things. But we also see there are instances where the lack of emotional intelligence in teachers is also seen, and it adds to the anxiety of having to face challenges of especially those students who already come from a problematic background, problems at home. Maybe parents have very high expectations from them. Parents do not visit the parent-teacher meetings. So my request to you is, could you throw some light on, and then there are bullying cases, that how to prepare the teachers to face these violent situations. Almost none of them have experience in emotional management of problematic problems. Yes, Dr. Kutappa.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. In fact, the question you've asked is very direct, and in some form, it expects to summarize Mr. Daniel Goldman, Mr. John Mayer, and Mr. O'Brien's, all the entire concepts of EI in, in a very short this thing. But I think one in our journey to understanding emotional intelligence, I think one of the most important things we as educators, as facilitators, as teachers need to accept is that there is a difference between emotional intelligence and mathematics. there's a difference between emotional intelligence and applied chemistry. The key difference being in maths, whatever problems are there, they have definite solutions. They have straightforward solutions. But in the realm of emotional intelligence, there is no one, sort of a method fits all. So I've had this, question in different forms. Of course, I've had this question being tabled on what is the approach, how do I address a certain this thing, how do I become emotionally aware and emotionally confident overnight. For instance, on 31st December, I wasn't so emotionally strong. And on 3rd January, when I step into class, 3rd January in the new year, when I step into class, I would like to be that much more emotionally stronger. Unfortunately, that's not how it works. Yeah. So one of the ways in which you can start is becoming aware of emotions, and more importantly, understanding the triggers of emotions. Once you start seeing those triggers once I start seeing those triggers in myself, I will then be able to see those triggers in the next person, maybe my colleagues, maybe my bosses. And once I, become adept at identifying those triggers in my colleagues, I will be able to see them in children. Yeah. So, and what's really important to understand when we say trigger here is an emotions trigger may not necessarily, be or may not necessarily be present in the previous 5 minutes or even in the, beginning of the day. An emotion that I experience right now might actually have its trigger as far back as 3 years ago. Yeah. So the literature in emotional intelligence says that it is the start point is one to identify that trigger. As once you start identifying the trigger, then the next step is, of course, self management. And when you start doing self management, you will automatically be able to see that same stream in the person next to you. It could be a parent, it could then be a student, and so on. A couple of aspects, I think, taking a leaf from Daniel Goleman, since we are on his his concept of emotional intelligence, is uh, empathy, self-realization, sort of knowing myself that much better, and then relationship management, using that information that I know about myself to and how it interplays in my relationships with others. So these are some ways. If I, as facilitators, since we are facilitators, we are able to sometimes go back in the evening and really observe ourselves throughout the day. So when we start observing ourselves throughout the day, more and more, we get to identify these triggers. And when we actually are able to identify the triggers in us, it is that much more easier to identify the triggers in the person in front of us. That then gives us, the initial answers, or puts us on the initial path to this. The other thing, one or two things, if I don't know, how am I on time? Do I have 2 minutes? The other two things that I would like to debunk is, number one, I think emotional intelligence got a lot of focus since 2005 when Daniel Goleman's book got published. But there are several, there are several concepts of emotional intelligence which have been around. For instance, there's John Mayer, who talks about the trait model of emotional intelligence, where he looks at human traits and he shows how we can balance our emotional intelligence based on the traits. There is another model which talks about the ability model, where it looks at human abilities, lists them out. There are about 6 or 7 abilities, and relates how we can build our EI, or where we stand on EI based on ability models. Each of these models has their own instruments, psychometric instruments, where we can self-calibrate and then work on a development model. Of course, I'm sharing this for those teachers, professors who are interested in furthering their journey on this. So I thought I'd share that. Yeah, I'm done. I hope
Yeah.
I know I've not directly addressed your question, but I hope I've put people on a journey towards it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I can see that this deep diving comes because of the background, because your area of specialization is psychology. And that is why it was a very deliberate attempt to bring you on the panel and give us that insight, the deep dive insight, which we will all look for. And I think none of us would have identified that it's important, to see and identify the triggers of emotions, which may not be visible at that point of time, or which may be an impact of some incident which has happened years ago. Thank you so much, Dr. Shoury. Moving on to, is Miss Seema Sahay there?
Yes, I am very much here. And sorry, I lost connectivity.
No problem.
Power cut.
Yeah.
And
so,
this is how it is a test of our emotional intelligence, of remaining composed and calm in all oddities.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. So, I was reading an article that stated that emotional intelligence helps students measure their social and emotional skills that are necessary to handle all kinds of challenges. And when we talk about preteens, that is adolescents, it's very necessary for parents to collaborate with the schools in helping gain that inner confidence. Sometimes, I've been into the system, you are in the system, and we see there is some kind of a gap which exists. Like, parents would say that, at home the child is performing. Yeah, at school the teachers would say the child is very happy and he interacts, but at home the child somewhere recedes into his own shell. There are gaps. So my question to you is, how can schools foster that engagement that will help them guide parents who a lot of times push their children too far? For example, they want them to be acing sports, learning music, and excelling in academics. Then, so, obviously, despite their best intentions. So just throw some light on that parent and school relationships, and how can we have a seamless outcome on that? Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you, Ms. Devyani. I think one question seeps into the other. And as I missed the first ice-breaking opening statement, so I will just club what I have to say. And of course, as an educator, as a principal, honing the children into a wholesome individual has always been the underlying, motive and inspiration for any teacher. And end of the day, I always think it this way, that it is a beautiful partnership between the parents and the school in honing all the abilities of the children. We all would agree that every and any child, whenever we talk about schooling, it has always been the primary concern of parents that bacha mera intelligent hona chahiye. So all the focus has been on the intelligence quotient. And that only allows for threshold competence of the child. It was as late as the 1950s when Abraham Maslow actually spoke about emotional strength. And then came with Michael Beldock in the year 1964, that there was talk of emotional intelligence. And then, of course, in 1983, Howard Gardner came up with multiple intelligences. So when I look at a child in a classroom, it becomes the primary responsibility of a school of honing all kinds of intelligences, and most importantly, emotional intelligence. You know how these last 2 years in the pandemic have taught us that we really cannot plan even the nearest future. We don't know how each day is going to unfold into. So here, how do we prep our children? And for that matter, when we are talking about the classroom, the school, it is also we teachers, we educators who need to also hone this intelligence to be emotionally rich, to be
And
able to
3 points, 3 points where you can, what we are looking at is what is that engagement
I'm coming to
between
that. I'm
school?
coming
Yeah,
to
yeah.
that. Since, as I said, I missed out the initial bit. So I'm just trying to bring you to that, to just to show the significance of emotional intelligence in the first place, how it is important to have emotional intelligence. And we have to make our parents, now coming to the parent-school connect in this, we have to understand that parents are very aspirational for their children. They tend to treat their children as their trophies. And please forgive me for using that word. We've all been parents, and wherever we have not been successful enough, we aspire our children to be that. In all good faith, in all good faith, parents are so overtly ambitious out there for their children. But in all of this, they forget that what we need to allow the children to develop are the people skills of, self-regulation, self-affirmation for every child, self-motivation, and self-awareness and self-discipline. And in doing all of this, self-dignity of the child is so important. So I think to bring out all these qualities of empathy, self-awareness, it is important also to take the parents into confidence and, have a constant rapport, a constant communication with the parents for the children's benefit. And for doing that, I'm sure often we have these parent sessions where parents workshops, webinars on parent counseling is undertaken. And, we tend to paint everyone with the same brush. What might work for child A might not work for child B or child C. We have to look at each and every child as an individual. Every child's emotional intelligence varies. And often we see that the parent background also affects the emotional health of a child. So to understand the child, for the child's benefit, it is important to first have a proper connect with the parents. So apart from having these parenting sessions, what I have devised in my school also, and this is something which we keep reviewing and understanding, is a concept of a sunshine call. Now, what is a sunshine call? Sunshine call is that we are all going through tough times, challenging times, health-wise, financially, emotionally as well. So these sunshine calls are just a way to connect with the parent for their well-being, all kind of well-being, health, medical, physical, emotional, social well-being. And I want to say this here that, this has really worked wonders. Many a times, a lack of communication also leads to a lot of communication gap, especially when the child is in question between the family and the school. So this gap has to be bridged by the teachers, by the school. And given the situation today, more and more webinars and, telephonic conversations, emails, WhatsApp calls, and whatever, as I said, every child would have a different requirement. So we need to rise to the occasion to bridge that. And, I'm reminded here of that film Tare Zameen Pe. And that is such a classic example of this boy who was differently abled, and he was a specially gifted child. But with all the good love the parents had in their heart for their child, they were not helping the child grow and be happy. And it was the school teacher who identified and then was able to share the same with the parents as to what was the reason for the child for being an underperformer and for being unhappy. So on and off, it is also required that without, hurting the sentiments or causing any kind of friction with the parents, We need to make them understand that we as parents also can go wrong in building that emotional diet, the emotional strength of the children. Not that we are an expert on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, Seema, I'll give you a last 30 seconds. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. So what I feel today is that it is also to build that faith, that trust, that bond with each and every stakeholder. The teacher, student, and the parent have to be together in building that emotional strength. A teacher who reprimands a child also plays with the self-dignity, and so also does a parent who doesn't understand the need of the child. We can encourage the child, but not be in a situation, be in a space with the child where we demoralize and demotivate the child. And this has to be also talked about with the parents, because being parents also, you can go wrong. Yeah. That is most important.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Seema. Very well said. And I really like the idea of sunshine call and educating the parents. We are already at 4:34, 5 o'clock we'll wind, and there are so many questions on which we need your input. So please be brief and crisp. So moving on to the next panelist, Ms. Vibha Khosla. I'll directly ask the question without laying the setting the stage, that since we all know we are talking about emotional intelligence, and it is the student and the teacher that is, and in fact also the parent well-being as well. But to you, I ask that there is something known as inner preparedness that is required to handle, emotions. Now, when you talk about age groups of adolescents and teenagers, their focus is more on reason, less on reason and more on emotions. So emotions are very high. And you spoke about self-awareness and self-regulation. And I want you to build upon that. How can we enhance the spectrum of the self-awareness and self-regulation in the classroom so that the actual value additions takes place and the EQ of the student is built? Yes, Ms. Vibha Khosla.
Okay, thank you, Devyani. So when we are talking about raising the EQ, and when we're talking about the adolescents, so one thing I would like to say that our adolescents today are very keen and they are aping the Western culture, right? We are very well talking about values. We say gratitude. You know, it's a word which has just come up. We are talking about forgiveness. We're talking about compassion. What is this? And I'll go and in the class, I'll go and ask that, which are the Indian scriptures that you've read? Everybody would say, I've read Ramayana, I've read Mahabharata. These are the things, these are the contrary things that I feel. Here I would want that as a school, we need to sensitize our children to what all we have. It is not our, culture, our heritage is not limited to just Ramayana and Mahabharata. Have we ever gone and seen the Vedas? Have we seen what, the yoga philosophy is speaking about? What is Buddhiman? हम बोलते हैं बुद्धिमान है. बुद्धि है क्या? So when I'm talking about buddhi, buddhi is what? Is it only intelligence or is it being wise? It is also being having the worldly knowledge. How do we have this worldly knowledge? We have this worldly knowledge when we are in a state of balance. What is the state of balance? The state of balance which is in harmony with the nature. We say sattva, we say tamas, right? So क्या है वो? जब हम सात्विक खाना खाते हैं तो हमारा सिस्टम अच्छा रहता है, तो हमारी सात्विक थॉट्स होती हैं, तो हमारा सिस्टम अच्छा होता है. तो जब when we try to go ahead and tell our children what value system is, what is gratitude? Gratitude is karma, right? We are doing karam, altruism, do it, selfless service karo. What is compassion, seva? These are all the terms which are already there in a culture, but we are trying to forget. If we keep, enlightening our children with these strong values, forgiveness, shama, empathy, fit into the other person's shoe, try to understand the other person's feeling. If we try to keep sensitizing our children to these values, we will see that they will be in a state of balance. Their EQ would be higher. We need to teach them what is savoring, having a savoring date with your own self. I'm trying to be very fast to sum it up fast. What is mindfulness? Dr. Kutappa so nicely spoke about those techniques. All those techniques are the techniques that we have for mindfulness. Be here now. Your concentration will be there. Your focus will be there. You will understand things. Meditate, right? Yoga. So like Seema ma'am, she just said, so what we've done in our classrooms, when our classes start, we can't tell children, do this, do this. So our teachers and our students, they do Anulom Vilom. We tell them to chant. So what are we doing? We are getting them to our value system. When our value systems will be strong, our emotions will be better because we'll be in a state of Vidya, a state of balance. We say Vidya and Avidya. So we'll be in that state of equilibrium. So that is what we need to do in our classrooms to sensitize our children to those things. And I think that's going to.
I'll interrupt you, and I want to ask you here that what you're talking is really makes sense. But how will you sell this to a 21st century student who is in the milieu of fast pace, the gizmas, the fast-paced life from food to the technology to everything, and what are those three things? I mean, I'm sure till in the primary and the middle school, still you can, but to adolescents and teenagers, what are those very practical techniques which are suitable to a 21st century, like you were talking about being mindfulness? How are you going to press this and sell it to a student who is 21st century student of class 9, 10 or 11? That is my question.
Great. So I spoke about savoring. When I say savoring, can't I tell my children, okay, fine, today we are all sitting for a virtual class. We are going to have a cup of hot chocolate milk, each one of us. We're going to have a savoring date, right? Tell your children, these children would be so super, super, super excited. Today we have a date with the teacher. We are going to see कि उस chocolate दूध में क्या-क्या है, क्या-क्या स्वाद आ रहा है. Somebody has put Hershey's, somebody has put, Cadbury's, somebody has put some other brand. They'll tell you the taste. They will understand कि उसका उस time पे क्या flavor आ रहा है, what is the benefit. That savoring would lead to mindfulness. They would be there, present there. So see, adolescents we've also gone through that phase. So I feel that they are smart. We need to be smarter. And if they're smarter, we have to be smartest. So you have to talk their way. You have to walk their way, right? For telling meditation, what we do with our junior classes, we just tell them, okay, beta, this is a flower. Smell the flower. Now, this is a candle that you have, blow a candle. What are we doing? We're telling them what is inhaling and exhaling, right? So I feel that, with children, you have to fit yourself into their shoe. You have to understand what they like. They may like to throw pranks. They may like to speak about you. They may like to speak bad about you. Accept it. Let them learn from their mistakes, right? Let them know that they can say no. So all these things are required. And I think the techniques that you mentioned, I would again reiterate, it's like savoring, meditation. And then when we say mindfulness and practicing some bit of yoga.
I would want to address, like, honestly, we are talking about emotional quotient and emotional intelligence and augmenting it. Reason being that we are in an age where we see our students in a very, very sad and depressive state, where we also see cases of bullyism, cases of depression, suicide, taking recourse to substance abuse and all, very high. I would request each of you to maybe reflect upon how would we tackle, how would we build upon the emotional quotient of our students to not succumb to these kinds of challenges. So very quickly, Seema, in 1 minute, if you could just sum up something, some techniques which your school is probably following, or how you people are tackling these issues. I'm sure these issues are common in all schools.
Yes, Ms. Devyani. I would like to add in here that what you are saying, there is absolute truth in what you're saying. These are very tough times for children, and children, especially in the online classes, in the virtual classes, often we get this to know from the parents that the children are cloistered in their own rooms, in their study rooms. They have stopped interacting with even their family members.
Yeah.
So now when we were put up with this challenge, I think it was most important that, how we could synergize this challenge as an opportunity for improvement of these children. And then I took a meeting with my teachers, and we have this flagship program in our school of pastoral care, which we have named Under One Umbrella. Now, this is a mentor-mentee program where what we did was we assigned, and especially I'm talking about classes 9 to 12, where there is so much of pressure of academics, parental pressure is there is peer pressure, all kinds of pressures are there. And there is hardly any physical interaction, so to say, with their fellow mates. They are not in the school. There is hardly any physical burning out, no outdoor activities. So then we realized that we need to have a mechanism where we can handhold the children emotionally to strengthen them. And here we began with this Under One Umbrella program, where for every teacher, we have assigned 4 or 5 students, wherein there are certain things they can't share with parents also or with their class teacher.
Yes.
But the mentor will have to take it up to share whatever issues the child is facing, which are so personal, so confidential. And I'm telling you from my these so many years of experience that this school program has worked wonders, and children have come out of their closet to share so many of their issues, and has brought them much more closer to their, teachers also, as well as for them to understand their parents also. And if the mentor feels, the teacher mentor feels that the parental intervention is required, then we also take that step forward. And we have been able to resolve so many other issues. Another way of looking at it, of bringing the children together, what Ms. Khosla said, of course, meditation, physical well-being, webinars, mindfulness, all of this works very well. And also, along with this, it is also important to entrust the children with the responsibility.
Right.
So I felt that there is a lot of scope for inverse leadership. While every time it is the teacher who is the proactive person, let's also step aside as a facilitator and let them don the hat of leadership. The students, when allowed with that, helps a lot. And what we did? We tried to weave it with our value-based month-wise special assembly and our school campaigns, say on cleanliness. And we roped in the new student council. And along with the teacher, student council, we arranged for such sessions and an array of activities on, cleanliness and being eco-friendly, and on recycling newspaper and various activities, making their own masks, whatnot, everything that was relevant.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Seema, because I'm really impressed with the kind of initiatives your school is taking. Like initially, you did talk about Sunshine Call and under one roof, one umbrella, and the inverse leadership. I would like to hear now from Dr. Shoury Kutappa, because how to tackle, because you were giving us a psychologist perspective, and how to tackle these issues that we are mentioning: bullyism, depression, respect, lack of respect, and case suicide or substance abuse. They are somewhere because our emotional quotient is the children are low on self-esteem, the emotional quotient is not honed properly, and yeah, so how would you look at this whole problem, and what are your suggestions to these problems?
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. I'll share my thoughts in three perspectives. One is a short description of the age group or the target audience that you're talking about. Number two, I would like to weave Ms. Khosla's thoughts on how we can actually inculcate or build EI, and Ms. Sahay's thoughts on inverse leadership. I'd like to weave them together. That's number two. And number three, I thought I'll talk about what works well. Yeah, not from a psychologist perspective, but from what has worked well for me on the ground. So number one, when you're attacking EI, or when we are targeting EI stability, we have to keep in mind that different age groups need a different approach. For instance, if you're talking to teenagers, I cannot give you an exact age, but let's just say for context, teenagers below the age of 15, the 12, 13, 14, 15 lot, they require a different approach. Whereas when you're talking to teenagers somewhere in this group where 16 to sort of 20, 21, they require a different approach. When you're addressing EI with an age group of 40 plus, like we are here, you need a different kind of approach. Yeah. For instance, if I spoke to the panelists, if we were, trying to inculcate EI, and supposing I spoke to the panelists about inviting them to connect to their core, or their core in the sense, in terms of their objectives in life, what they were trying to achieve, it's not going to really come in sync, because we are already, somewhere there. Yeah. But when you go into somebody who's an 18 to 21 age group, and you try to invite thoughts on, on this context, saying that, for instance, you ask them, why are they doing what they're doing? Yeah. Sort of the questions need to be directed towards the why part of it, and towards a life perspective part. So when you sort of engage in a discussion with them on the why part and sort of a long prolonged life part, usually you'll get at some sort of a goal, or some sort of an aim, or some sort of a this thing, some sort of a target that they have. Oftentimes what happens is, due to the stress and the burden of the current environment that they're in, maybe exam pressure, maybe parents pressure, maybe pressure from this side, etc., that existing view, or that existing dream, or that existing picture that they have in their minds somehow gets clouded away. So the moment you are able to connect them with that existing view, the why of my life in this age group, the 15 to 21, you'll immediately see that they start stepping out of that down curve that they are in, and they'll start responding to you, they'll start connecting with you. And therein, of course, next step is to encourage sort of connection with self. Ms. Khosla has indicated a few techniques, where all those steps help to connect with yourself inside. So for this age group, that sort of a thing usually works. Yeah. For the age group, if you're talking from 15 and less, between 12 to 15, if you're talking about those teenagers, I've seen that these people tend to connect with deep thinking topics a lot. When you give them some seed of a philosophical thought, not necessarily philosophical, a sort of a very deep thought, they get very interested in it. They get very aroused, awakened suddenly. And then, the talk, this age group is somewhere within 8th, 9th, 10th standard, if I'm getting the class age correct. So the moment that first connect is established, when you're able to sow something, a deep thinking thought in it, and then you slowly weave it around what is it to them. So if this is, for instance, if this is a deep kind of a thought, you connect with it, what is it to you? Yeah. An example, if I were to give a very commodity kind of an open, simple example so that we understand what I'm trying to talk about. Let's say we want to buy some item, a phone, or maybe let's say we want to buy a car. Yeah. One of my values probably is altruism, for instance. Yeah. So one of my values inside me is altruism. Thereby, I believe that any organization that donates some of its profits to for good work, is a good organization. Then I start looking for organizations that do this. Top of my mind is, okay, Tata's had donated 500 crores to the pandemic relief effort and all that, and thereby it connects with my values, it connects with my beliefs, and therefore I will buy a Tata car. So similarly, I'm saying that when you interact with this age group, you need to be able to arrive at that connect. What is their basic value? What is their basic this thing? The moment you have triggered that, your building on the emotional quotient journey becomes that much more straightforward. Whatever emerges thereafter, you follow that and you take it forward.
So
Of
what
course,
I'm trying to say is that you have to constantly feed the children with challenging situations which they constantly relate to. As they are running short of time, I would quickly want to jump on the questions from the audience. We have very interesting questions. We have similar questions from Ms. Bhavya, GD Goenka Public School, Delhi, and Ms. Neeti Gulati, Ramjas International School, Delhi. Both our viewers want to ask a question which is quite similar. That number one, how to build emotional intelligence among the students during this pandemic situation. And the other one says how to ensure the students feel encouraged to be proactive learners despite the learning gaps that we have been created past 2 years of online teaching and learning. So, Ms. Vibha Khosla, could you address this very briefly in say about a minute? Yeah.
Okay, so as I was saying, I'll just continue with the same, and I'll say that, when we strengthen the value system, we make them aware about their emotions. That leads to happiness, the happiness which is more sustainable, the happiness which is not just the pleasure, happiness for pleasure. Once children are into that state, the EQ will be better, their skills for coping up with different life situations will be better. So I would always say that the value system in the classrooms needs to be strengthened. That's very important. Once that's strengthened, then we need words of affirmation. There has to be rapport formation. There has to be quality time that is given. There should be a time, when it's only the time of mindful journaling. The teacher should not bother about the syllabus, but should just connect with the children. When the teacher starts connecting with the children, she knows the child better. The child knows the teacher better. The child learns better. The problems are minimized, and the results are better, the outcomes are better. So sometimes, most of the time, what we do is we are listening just to answer back, but we should listen to imbibe also. We should listen, to hear out somebody. So we should give that patient listening to others. We should have empathy. So these skills and these values can be strengthened by the teachers. Once they are self-aware, they regulate their emotions, they are self-motivated, these things will begin.
Yeah. And how can you relate what you're saying to the pandemic situations? They both have the same questions, that how to fill the gap and how to motivate them during the pandemic, during these online.
So when we say that we are doing online, why is the teacher who is always speaking? Why are we not giving a chance to our students? Why are we not having activities for the students? Why are we not doing collaboration for the students? If you tell me that you have to speak and I have to listen, I'm not going to listen to you. I'm very clear. But if you tell me that I have to give some input, so you're going to give me something and there's going to be a quiz after that, I would be intrigued. So, that's why I said that as facilitators, we have to be smarter to give them better techniques. The teaching strategies have to be stronger. They have to be collaborated. They have to be child oriented instead of the teacher orientation, or teacher oriented. So, because what happens mostly, it's the lecture method that we do. Let's move from the lecture method to the student coming ahead and speaking. Children would do anything and everything to be active in the class, involve their parents. They will have reason to be, right? So we have to give them that purpose. Pandemic, it's become easier to involve your children because there's technology. There's so many quizzes. Everybody's on the phone and the computer. So let's stop thinking in the negative approach. Let's take a positive approach. There is too much that can be done and children can be extremely happy. I can tell you in my school, children are waiting for the class. If the class doesn't start, they would message the class hasn't started. So that's the kind of interaction that is required from the teacher. So that's all kudos to the teachers who are working so hard throughout.
Great. I think very right. And some of the tips that Ms. Khosla has given, that the teachers need to bring in some kind of a newer techniques to involve students, be collaborative, and sometimes have a date of hot chocolate with their students too. That was a very interesting aspect. Very quickly, we are already short of time, but I move on to Ms. Seema Sahay. And this question is from Ms. Yamini Pandey of GD Goenka School. How can the parents be, because she was talking about the parents and I wanted to build upon that itself, be sensitized about their role as equal stakeholders in providing emotional support to the students, because as we see that in their good intentions, sometimes it's the parents that push the students too far. And if you could just brief up your answer in a minute, Ms. Seema. Yeah.
So we all have talked about, the children and how we are going to, even in these times, the current times of the pandemic, how every child needs to be a self-starter. And to be a self-starter, a child needs to have a very high emotional quotient. And of course, the parents' role is very, very critical and important in this. While we have to understand that, the time spent with of the children in the school has minimized because of online virtual mode of learning, and the larger time they are spending at home. But in that too, we see that parents are also coping with their set of challenges. We have to understand from their viewpoint also. So, when we look at the child being regulated and being monitored and supervised in the virtual classes, it is also we as educators have to understand the problems of the parents. And, then there has to be a kind of a synergy between all of us. While we say that we are having our classes, we have to have a limited screen time. Parents are also wanting that the screen time has to be limited. The school also is under pressure, under duress to complete the syllabus. So then we have to have a very fine tuning first with the parents. And for that, the window of communication has to be open. If I clearly remember earlier, before the pandemic, the mobile phone was a strict no-no. Today, all our communication with the parents or with the children is on the mobile, through mails, through WhatsApp, through various WhatsApp groups. So we have to understand, I think, the classroom has entered the bedrooms now, to the living rooms and to the study rooms of each and every house. And it has unknowingly and knowingly both brought the parents and the teachers and the school much closer.
Right.
And in all of this, I think it is also a blessing in disguise that the communication has become stronger and much more open than before, than what it was pre-pandemic. So
Right.
the parent has to also understand that they don't have to push the children so hard about education. We are in the online mode. There are certain activities which are compromised. Today, first and foremost, emotional well-being and health is most of priority today for everybody. So for that, we have to have a very fine tuning and strike a very fine balance of everything with the parents. And I think here, as much communication can be established by the school through all kinds of, exchange of mails and letters, and even whenever there is a possibility of having in-person parent-teacher meetings, that needs to be organized. And we have done that on a class-to-class basis, where we have called groups of parents and met them in person, talked to them, so that we are able to have the best of whatever the situation given in hand.
Right. But yeah, I also feel that, uh, apart from the fact that a virtual world has brought parents, teachers, and the classrooms closer to each other, it has somewhere increased the anxiety of parents, as if they're constantly checking in. I don't know, I've been hearing it out so much that they've been constantly checking in how the teacher is teaching, whether my child is responding or what. So somewhere the surveillance that is there on the class, functioning of the class, has increased manifold, and that has led to pressure on the educator, a pressure on the child, a pressure on the school. A word of advice to the parents is that because in the physical space also you were never there in the class and your child was performing very well. So let there be days, let there be hours, let there be classes where the children and the teachers are having fun, they are talking something which is inconsequential, or probably just venting it out, and not do a surveillance and an audit of the class. Don't you think that has been happening? That's something
Ms. Devyani, I would like to come in here.
Yeah.
That what thing happened initially. It's
Yeah.
been 2 years now, and I think we have been able to iron out all the creases, and now parents are very well settled. So our strategy today is, if there is any kind of concern, I won't say complaint, any kind of concern on email or telephonically or on the WhatsApp group, we immediately address it. So today I can say this with elan that all our parents are settled, and I'm sure Mrs. Khosla would also say the same for her parents as well. Today the parents are convinced, they are affirmed that our children are able, the schools have turned around 360-degree and are doing a fantastic job. And we have learned, we have evolved in the last 2 years. And given the situation, given the scenario, I think this is the best all the schools could do, and we are doing the most, and we have made the most of the situation. So parents understand that, and I think on this point, they are fairly settled now. In fact, bringing the children back in person to offline mode will be another Herculean task. Absolutely. Because now they've become so used to being in the online mode.
Yes. Thank you so much, everyone. We come to the end of this show. In conclusion, I would just say that emotional intelligence influences what we do, who we meet. It determines how we look, how we feel. EI decides our course of life. Happiness is a voyage, it's not a destiny. So, dear educators, accept your emotions and that of your students and work with them. Conventional teaching just imparts knowledge or fills students' brain with facts, but today's educators have a broader role. They are mentors, they are counselors, and they are, of course, educators. They manage their emotions, resolve conflicts non-violently, and make responsible decisions. In brief, they develop the subject intelligence as well as the emotional intelligence of their students. We'll be back with some more interesting deliberations soon. And if you want us to discuss a particular theme or an issue or have a suggestion, do write to us at info@edudevs.com. Thank you so much, and to all our panelists for your gracing this panel today. And we had some great insights from Ms. Seema Sahay, Ms. Vibha Khosla, and Dr. Shoury Kutappa, who always has a deep diving into issues of psychology. And we'll have you more on this panel. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you.
Thank you so much.